We are here with Brooks Pierce, who is the CEO of Inspired Entertainment, a small company, a small growth company that has some unique product lines that we will talk about in a little bit. Um, One of the things that uh, evolutions, maybe, if I'm correct, Brooks, first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Frank. It's always good to see you. Interesting to do it by Zoom this time instead of in person, but appreciate you having me on.
Well, I appreciate your being here. And uh, w- we're seeing Inspired maybe evolve, and you told me whether this is correct, more and more and more towards an emphasis on digital. So maybe you could describe what uh, Inspired is today. Is it a land-based company, a digital company, a land-based becoming more heavily digital?
Yeah, it's both. We certainly have emphasized the digital part of our business, and just to be clear, the digital part that we talk about is both our interactive or iGaming business as well as our virtual sports business, which does have a retail component, but it's primarily an online business. And then the other side of it is the machine business that's predominantly in Europe. We've always been a server-based gaming company, which, we can talk about at some point. But we've gotten bigger and bigger in the States and in Canada, and it's certainly a target market for us. So even though we're trending more towards the digital business, as a lot of the industry is doing, we still have a pretty strong component in the land-based gaming machine business.
So if we look out 5 years from now, what's the mix, do you think?
I'd say certainly 60+% in digital, because our iGaming business, for example, has grown on an EBITDA basis, which is the seemingly the measure everyone in the industry uses these days, but has grown kind of 8 quarters in a row of more than 40%. And now that we're more or less through we are through the third quarter. I would expect that trend to continue. So it frankly is just part of the business, and you see it in the industry as well. It's a very big growth driver for us at Inspired. And the nice part about it is, even with those kind of growth records, we're still very small from a market share perspective. So we think we have plenty of runway to go, both certainly in North America, but also in our home market in the UK and really around the world. So yeah, I expect the trend of digital to go forward, and being a bigger part. And it obviously has the attributes that we like. It's got, lower capital intensity, less labor, margins tend to be higher. Content makes a huge difference and is an easy way to differentiate yourself. So it's kind of just naturally evolving to more of the business being digital.
And the margins are very good for you in digital, I believe.
Yeah, in the both the iGaming business and our virtual sports business, our EBITDA margins are north of 60%, and virtual sports are close to 80%. So yeah, it's certainly ideal from that perspective. And the flow through from a cash flow perspective for those who are watching this that are investors, obviously is also better in that, because there's just far less capital than it takes to, buy gaming machines, for example.
Uh, you've do develop a lot of your own games, and but we see announcements every fairly frequently of new games, and that's a capital intensive business in and of itself. Uh, you feel comfortable being able to compete in that area and grow market share against the big guys out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because, certainly in North America, we'll just use that as an example. We've been growing pretty consistently. I think the last Eilers report has us over 4% share, which is frankly, with, again, as I said before, plenty of room for runway. But for us, we don't have a big class three. We have no class three footprint. So when somebody walked into a casino, they wouldn't be likely to see any of our games. So we've done this really on the back of our content. So I would say we're probably, certainly, if not the biggest, one of the biggest of the non-big slot providers in North America and in the North American iGaming market. And in the UK, where it's really much more our home market, where we have, tens of thousands of machines, our market share is significantly higher. We're over 10% in that business because people walk into a betting shop, they go into an AGC, they'll see our games, and then when they go and play online, it's games and titles that they're familiar with. So obviously, we'd like that to be more and more in North America, and it's a huge market and growing, and we're getting there. But yeah, we're competing against guys that have a lot more resources than we do. So I think we're kind of punching above our weight.
And, the fact that you're showing up at 4% is significant because it's probably 4% of where you were more than where you were a few years ago.
Oh yeah, it's tripled in, and probably the last 3 or 4 years. So, when you talk about the fact that we have these releases about, our new games coming out, I think that's one of the things that the operators really count on is they want to make sure that you as a supplier have a very consistent roadmap that you're delivering, new types of games on a regular basis and that they can count on it. And then when your games perform, it's like the real estate business. It's all about getting on the front page and how long you can stay on the front page. Because frankly, the amount of content in the iGaming business these days is kind of staggering. I mean, you look on whether it's a DraftKings or FanDuel or MGM, they've got thousands of games. So kind of rising above the crowd in that space is not necessarily easy, but frankly, we've been doing a pretty good job of that.
Uh, Inspired for a long, long time has been a little bit of a story stock in the sense that you've had a couple product lines that theoretically have vast potential. And one of them that you mentioned is virtual sports.
Sure.
Uh, is virtual sports someday going to achieve some of that vast potential?
Well, it's certainly sometimes the bane of my existence, and sometimes the apple in my eye. It just kind of depends on the day. Look, we have a number of great attributes in the virtual sports business. We have by far the largest market share on a worldwide basis. As we talked about before, the margins are, extremely attractive. Um, we had a meteoric kind of growth period, and then it kind of tempered a little bit and has now stabilized. But we still have had the majority of our growth without getting any real meaningful penetration in the North American market, which really is the thing that we're primarily focused on, is trying to get a bigger footprint in North America. So there's regulatory challenges on that side. It's only legal in a small number of states. It's not like sports betting that's, across 30 states. So we've got a little bit of a challenge there. We went out and acquired a bunch of licensed content that would resonate in North America with the NFL and the NBA, and the NHL, which is a relatively new game. But frankly, we've got that product that works in our markets outside of North America, but it will really work in North America. But we've just got to get ourselves, kind of more deeply ingrained with some of the big sports betting operators. And frankly, we're now expanding into the lottery segment. So we now have 3 state lotteries that have virtual sports, and we see that as another good growth driver. So I'm eternally optimistic about getting virtual sports to be a bigger part of the North American landscape. And you know as well as anybody, there's so much news right now in the sports betting world and prediction markets, and who knows where that's going. And we look at virtual sports as a very nice adjunct to any operator to add to their portfolio.
Another of those product lines that appears to have vast potential is your hybrid dealer.
Yeah, I mean, hybrid dealer. So we've been, as probably in the last couple of interviews that you and I have done at G2E, we've been talking at each stage of the evolution of it. First, it was a concept, then it was a demonstrated product, and now we're out and rolling it out with both the tier one operators. Excuse me. So we've got BetMGM's had the product out for kind of over a year. Caesars, FanDuel just launched a game in September that had a sports, it's called Tailgate Takeover. So it had kind of a football theme about it. But we're also getting a lot of traction with what I would call the tier two operators who may not have the capabilities to do something with some of the other live dealer products out there. So we're still in the phase of growing the network. We'll obviously, hopefully, people will come by our booth at G2E and see some of the products that we'll be showing this year that will be kind of accentuating some of the brands that we've developed in the iGaming business. So yeah, we still feel very bullish about the hybrid dealer product. But I'd say it's in baseball parlance, it's probably still maybe the second or third inning, so we still have a ways to go.
And when you get to the ninth inning and you're crossing home plate and the fans are cheering, how big would that be?
It's a good question. I get asked that by pretty much everyone I deal with, whether it's board members or Lorne or shareholders. Look, I don't think it's going to be as big as the iGaming business because it is a bit of a niche. But I certainly think it will be a meaningful contributor. And over the course of, to use your phrase, over by the time we get to the ninth inning and crossing home plate, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, 5, 10, 15, 20 million EBITDA business. Just kind of depends on if it grows the way we expect. I mean, certainly that's been the case with iGaming. I think iGaming's probably grown faster than anybody would have predicted, and certainly it has for us. And I'm hopeful that hybrid dealer will follow along in the same trajectory. And it's starting to kind of click on that.
Even though we are tend to be American focused by virtue of who we are and where we are, you have a couple of very important international markets. One of them is an established market, which is the UK. And you've recently sold out of the holiday park business.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the UK and what it holds for Inspired.
Yeah, so UK is was really Inspired's home market. It's where most of our employees sit. We have kind of more than half of the betting shop business from a gaming machine side of the business. We're in the pubs business. We're in AGC. So we have a big land-based business in the UK, but it obviously was the biggest iGaming market that's really kind of spread to North America. So yeah, I mean the UK is a thriving market. Obviously, it's got its issues like it does in the States. There's regulatory challenges, there's tax issues, as there are in probably every jurisdiction. But it is kind of our home market. And we think we know the player base there very well. We've been very successful with the biggest operators in the market. Our customers are the Entains and the Flutters and the Betfreds of the world. So we have a history and a legacy, and it's an important market for us. But we've got a number of other markets that are probably equally important, or certainly very important. Greece, where we're now up over 9,000 machines in the Greek market and have pretty much a monopoly with our customer OPAP on the virtual side of the business. Turkey's turning out to be a big market. And Brazil is also a huge market for us in virtual sports. So we're a very global company. But my legacy and Lauren's legacy is both, we're North American based and have been in this industry for a long time. So we spend a huge portion of our time trying to get ourselves to be bigger and bigger in North America.
You mentioned Brazil. Brazil is one of those markets that I was thinking of where you guys think you have a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean we do. I mean it's for certainly in terms of virtual sports, it's probably our biggest market. And that's from a relatively standing start here the last couple of years. It became a fully regulated market, as you know, in January. So now we're paying significant taxes in Brazil that we weren't paying before. But we have the two biggest operators from a virtual sports perspective in with Bet365 and Betano. As you would know, it's a crazy mad soccer market, which is where virtual sports is really the predominant sport for us, primarily because of the markets we're in, but also it's from a betting proposition. There's a lot of interesting ways to bet, a soccer game. So the Brazil market is key to us. We've got the two biggest operators, but we've been adding pretty consistently, the next tier of operators. And so we expect Brazil to be probably the biggest growth market for us in virtual sports. But we also feel it's going to be a good market for us with hybrid dealer. And we're seeing some tremendous growth so far in the interactive side of the business. So Brazil, Brazil, most people don't realize Brazil's a market of 230 million people, and it's really in the early stages of development. So I'm sure many of the guys and girls you'll be talking to here have pretty distinct strategies about how they're going to capture the Brazil market because, 230 million, population markets don't come along very often.
Right. Back to the UK for a second. Uh, and you mentioned there are tax and regulatory issues in all jurisdictions, but in the UK, right now there are some proposals for some pretty significant tax increases. How would Inspired be affected if those go through?
Well, I think, yeah, look, we've had to in every market around the world have to adjust when taxes change, and generally taxes go up, not down. So we prepare for that in the UK, and we've certainly modeled out a number of ways. It's an interesting argument that's going on back and forth in the UK. Certainly, from the government side, they want to raise the taxes for whatever causes that they think they need. But certainly the industry and those that are proponents of the industry are saying, look, the last thing that you want to do is to drive business to the black market, which is proving that, that is what happens. And frankly, there's a huge number of jobs at risk in the UK market. So I think it's going to be a tough dilemma for, the government in the UK to try and find the right balance. We're expecting the taxes are probably going to go up, but we're hoping that it's not going to be something that ends up, having a huge impact on the industry. And I think the UK government will certainly everything that we're reading in the press is saying that they're going to take a measured look at the business and not be reacting to, one side or the other.
Okay. Uh, the topic du jour in every industry today is artificial intelligence.
Sure.
Are you guys deploying artificial intelligence in any way, and what do you hope, if so, what do you hope to achieve with it?
Yeah, it is interesting the topic du jour, and I send articles to my team where I have articles that have said things as great. I think it was Fortune that came out and said, well, 95% of AI initiatives fail, which I thought was stark and dramatic. But obviously, you read about kind of every industry is talking about how AI is going to transform their business, and we're frankly no different. So we use AI across a number of the parts of our business, anywhere from the game design and development to the artwork to customer support. So, we see AI as a tool that we obviously need to use and understand in the most effective way. We're not seeing as much for the player side of it. It's really more kind of for us as a company and how we can get more efficient and do things, in an easier and faster manner, which ultimately translates into, efficiency and results for us as a company. But yeah, it's something that anybody who sits in one of these CEO interviews, if they're not thinking about hey, how AI is potentially going to impact or transform their business, they're probably not doing their job.
Okay, we're heading into G2E. Uh, what should folks look for when they come to your booth?
So probably along the lines of what we've been talking about, certainly with the hybrid dealer, we're going to be showing some new products that will be accentuating some of our brands that have been the most successful in iGaming. We have a game called Wolf It Up, which has done phenomenally well. It's been a top 5 to 10 performer across a number of operators, and we're bringing that title across to hybrid dealers. So that'll be the first time we've actually taken a homegrown title and integrated it into a hybrid dealer game, and we think that'll be pretty exciting. So we'd want people to come by, take a look at that. In virtual sports, everything you hear about in the States in particular is about same game parlays or bet builders. So for the first time, we'll be showing products that have the ability in virtual sports to be able to do prepackaged same game parlay bets. So that's an exciting initiative. And we're also going to have, for the first time, we're going to have a virtual crash game called Fortune Flyer. Again, in a market like Brazil, crash games are a huge part of the Brazilian market. So we think that's something that people are going to want to see in an innovation. And then we've got a new cabinet, the Valiant cabinet, that's been rolled out in Illinois and is doing very well there. And we'll expect to roll it out to more customers across North America. So yeah, we've got for again, probably goes back to what your intro was. We're a relatively small company compared to, some of the guys like, the IGTs and Aristocrats or Light and Wonders of the world. But again, I think from a product offering perspective, and certainly our customers seem to validate that, we are a key part of their offerings to their players.
Okay, great. Good overview. I have to ask you though, I have to express my interest, ignorance here. What is
Sure.
a crash game?
So crash games are basically the way it goes, and probably the easiest way to describe it. Probably the game that is most known is called Aviator. So basically, you have four planes that are flying, and you're betting on one of those planes, and you're trying to bet exactly when that plane is going to crash. So it's really just a kind of meter going up, and it gives you the ability to be able to cash out at a certain point. The plane may never actually take off and you lose your bet that way. So it's a phenomenon. It's worthwhile you doing some background research on crash games because it's a big part of the market, certainly in Brazil and other markets. So come by the booth and I'll give you a demo. I think you'll like it. It's a pretty interesting game.
Okay, sounds interesting. What else, Brooks, in wrapping up, what else would you like folks to know about inspired entertainment?
Well, I think, one of the things that's probably interesting, and I know for you, because a lot of the themes that you talk about is looking at the world from an investor's perspective. Look, we're becoming one of the few publicly traded supplier companies with all of the consolidation and privatization that's happening. With Light and Wonder now moving to the Australian market, we're becoming one of the only public suppliers out there. So I think, by any measure, from a performance standpoint, we think our company's undervalued, but obviously the market will make that determination. And, we work pretty hard every day to continue to try and grow the business and shift the business to the digital part that we talked about, which has all the attributes we're looking for. So I think it's a company from an investor standpoint. People, even though we're relatively small, they should keep an eye on us.
Okay, and we will do that. Great overview. Thank you, Brooks.
All right, Frank, always good to see you. Thanks.